Hello everybody and welcome. So we're in the committee suite tonight, and just to let you know that there are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located at the side of this room, through reception, and then meet up in the War Memorial. This meeting is being webcast, so we're live on the internet, and it'll also be available on YouTube after this meeting. And can I just ask that everybody ensures their mobile phone is turned off or on silent? Thank you. Okay, so apologies for absence. Councillor Rattigan is unable to attend, and Councillor Williams has sent his apologies, but we are hoping Councillor Harvey will be in attendance shortly to sub. I think everybody else is here. Okay, agenda item 2. Are there any declarations of interest? Nope. Number 3, any urgent matters? Nope. Okay, so we've got item 4, the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of November. Are we all in agreement with them? Yeah. Okay, so on to the main first item. We've got the HR operations and workforce information update. So we've got, as usual, Sarah here to update us on that. So after Sarah's presented the report, we can then ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to do a quick summary for you of the HR operations and workforce report. As usual, this contains huge amounts of information related to all aspects of our HR data that we hold in relation to our workforce. So I'm just going to pull out a few key elements from it and then obviously take any questions that any of you have. So the initial part of the report focuses on our workforce demographic information. For those of you that have been in attendance at committee previously, you perhaps have noticed that it's in a slightly different format. So previously we used to have the data in a number of different areas, and we felt in terms of you being able to really see it in a succinct format, it would be helpful to have it in one place. So the format does look slightly different, but that enables us to walk through a number of key equality areas in relation to our workforce. So gender, age range, cultural and ethnic origin, and also whether staff identify as having a disability or not. So you'll also note from the report that we've been able this time for the first time to do some comparisons with the 2021 census data for the borough. So members may want to note that we are broadly in line in relation to our age profile, in terms of the fact that the majority of our workforce is within the 35 to 54 age range, as is the case within the borough in terms of working age population, and our smallest age range in terms of the numbers within the workforce is between the 18 and 24 age range, again as per the borough. Similarly, our data in relation to ethnic and cultural background is broadly in line with that in the borough. So we have just over 81% of our workforce reporting as white, and within the census it was 88.5% in the borough. Also of note, we have seen an increase in staff reporting as being from ethnic minority communities. So again, that's something that's really positive as we continue to focus on making our organisation as attractive and accessible as possible to come and work within. In terms of establishment and turnover, which is section 4 within the report, you'll note that there's been a slight reduction in headcount and full-time equivalent, or FTE. Obviously, this is based on when the data report was run. Clearly, in terms of things like turnover, we do have staff leaving and staff joining the organisation on an ongoing basis. So this is a point in time when the data was pulled. Also, we've had a slight reduction in turnover when you compare that to the full year previously, so that's the table in 4.2. But actually, when I compare the data with the same period last year, so April to December, the total turnover rate has gone down slightly from the same period last year, so it was 10.9, now 9.33. Whereas the voluntary resignation rate is broadly the same, so it was 7.09 for the same period last year compared to 7.18% for the period this year. We've got a number of ways that we've cut the data in terms of our leavers within the organisation, so reason for leaving, service area, length of service, grade, etc. No particular patterns to note around that, but again, they're things that we monitor on an ongoing basis to see whether there are any particular trends over time. In relation to sickness absence, again, this is an area of data that's obviously very important to us as an organisation, so something that we tend to look at and cut in a number of different ways. So again, if I do a brief comparator to the same period last year, and again this is additional data to that's within the report. So the report indicates that we've had a reduction in the average days lost for the same period last year. So April to December last year was 6.49 average days lost. It's 4.32 this time, which again is positive in relation to the target that we have as an organisation as well. And again, you'll also be able to note there's data around long to short-term absence, those that have had zero absence, and again by service area. The area that I particularly wanted to focus on was reason for absence, and again this is something that typically we do cover within the committee. So you'll note in section 5.5 that COVID for the most recent period was the highest reason for absence, with the second being anxiety, stress and depression. So I'll take them in that order. Starting with COVID, positive to note that the average length of absence due to COVID has decreased. So compared with last year, people were on average off for 9 days with COVID. It's now 3.9, but it has become our top reason for absence. We do continue to focus on support for all sickness absence, but especially around mental health. And as you will see later in the report outlined in section 7, we do that through a number of different mechanisms, including support through our employee assistance programme, face-to-face counselling and access to our mental health champions, which are specially trained members of staff. You'll also note in section 7 that we have undertaken a number of events supporting all sorts of areas, which has included World Mental Health Day and Macmillan, when we ran some joint coffee mornings both in our main civic offices and also in our Wade Road depot. And similarly, we've done the same recently in the Time to Talk event in February of this year. And there are a number of events listed in the report that are planned for the coming year. So the bits that I just skipped over, just because that sort of followed on from the conversation around sickness, is the recruitment equality monitoring information, so the recruitment data. So again, you'll notice this is presented in a similar format to that of our current workforce. So just some positive headlines from that to note. We've had an increased percentage in applications from those in that 18 to 24 age range, which, as I mentioned earlier, is the lowest age range that we have within our current workforce. So that's really positive. A slight reduction in applicants reporting as having a white cultural and ethnic origin background. And again, the diversity of the workforce is something that we want to continue to focus on. So you'll note in section 8 we talk about, as an example, our employability work. So we are continuing to do work with a whole range of partners, specifically in the period since the last committee. We've been doing work with schools and colleges, everything from mock interviews to attending apprenticeship fairs, and also helping with wider employability skills. So really keen to kind of promote the council as an employer of choice within the local community, and especially for those in the younger age group who may not immediately think of the council as being somewhere where they may want to host their career, telling them about what it is that we can offer in the huge range of careers that are actually available within the organisation. Just briefly want to talk about some of the recruitment activity that we've been doing, and again this is something that's come up previously within committees. So between the 1st of November and today, we've had 23 new starters to the organisation across a range of different services: finance, planning, customer services, parks and street scene, housing, etc. And during that same period, we've advertised 56 roles, again across the organisation. So lots of activity continue to happen around recruitment, and again looking to kind of build on those links we've made in the community, especially through things like our apprenticeship roles. So I think that was everything that I had to share with members, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Tuskin.
Thank you for that, Sarah. That's very useful. I'm just having a look, and one of the things that we talked about is that you sort of went through on the section 3.2 and looking at the sort of decrease in actual number of people that consider themselves disabled. And I think you sort of hinted at in the recruitment, I think that was about 10% in the recruitment itself, which seemed to be about the same as that. But obviously it's good to see that we've got more people that represent the different ethnic communities coming in, which represents the town. But obviously from the disability thing, is there anything you're doing to try to encourage more disabled people, especially if you have an ageing population, which also means potentially more disability, age-related disability as well?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Tustone. I think there's a couple of things around that for me. So just briefly in terms of our existing workforce. So I did mention some of the work we've done around mental health, but we also ran a really positive session for staff around physical disability. So we had a couple of members of staff talk about their experience of living with a disability, one which was what's known as a visible disability and one that was a hidden disability, and really able to share their lived experience. That wasn't something we'd really done before, and actually was really positive, and all sorts of staff were really pleased to hear those examples. So I think there's something about our existing workforce and how we make it a safe space for people to declare that they do have a disability. Again, when you look at the definition under the Equality Act of what constitutes a disability, it's incredibly broad. So my sense probably is there are more of our members of staff who have a disability than maybe have declared that. So we need to unpick that a little bit more. So have we created a safe environment for staff to declare that they have, and things like that will help. But also really helping people to understand what having a disability does mean, because as I say, there are a huge range of conditions, if you like, that would be covered within that. In terms of going out and encouraging people with a disability to join us, as well as the general employability events that we're doing, we do specific work experience, for example, and have linked up with other partner organisations again to just try and enable individuals to have a route into the organisation. But it's something that we kind of continue to work on with all of those protected characteristics. I think that's just as important as all of the others.
Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, well, thanks for a very sort of clear, easy to read report. I'd echo Councillor Tustone in saying it's nice to see an uptick in the diversity side of things. Most of the data that's presented is 2 full years and 1 part year, except for the equality strand information. I just wondered if there's a reason for not going as far back 1 year to actually be able to see whether there's a trend as opposed to just a change.
Thank you. So yes, there is, and the short and simple answer to that relates to the change in HR system. So where we've moved over to a different system, both in terms of our recruitment side and also in terms of our current workforce, we've actually expanded the equality data that we collect. So previously it was quite a limited data set, but we do actually collect much wider data now, and again we're collecting data down to a more granular level. So if you look at things like our cultural and ethnic origin, it is broken down to quite small levels, again to mirror other data sets like the census. So that's why the data doesn't go back quite as far in relation to this report, because you can't easily map some of it across, but rest assured that we obviously have access to that data, and we do look at the kind of general trends over time, even if we can't specifically match some of the granular detail because of those changes. But really positive that we are collecting more data in more detail.
Councillor Tustone.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at resignation. I think we did talk about this at the last committee. So we've got the resignations, and that and I appreciate that is the bulk. There's a lot of staff in the area, but in the environment and community services, but as a percentage, it still comes out as the highest, with planning and sustainability and infrastructure the second one. And then when you look also at the service area for average days lost, you'll see environment and community services having a negative performance against the corporate target. I've got a feeling this was an issue. And I think one of the things we talked about was, if I recall correctly, was around it's very obvious because of weather dependency and the manual work. So is this still an issue, or are you sort of starting to see some sort of work on trying to get this to reverse the trend?
Thank you. So I think a couple of things I would say in response to that, and actually when you've raised that occurs to me that if you look at section 5.4, where we've got the sickness data and we've got the average number of staff in the area, it would probably be quite useful to have that so that you can map across, because if you go back to the table that you're referring to in terms of 4.3, yes, we've had, in terms of the percentage of overall headcount of all our staff, the 12 resignations would be 2%, but actually when you look at it, the percentage of the number of staff in that area, obviously we have many more staff in that area, so you would expect there to be more resignations. So I think that's a useful point for us to pick up for next time to help you in terms of deciphering the report. So I think they're broadly in line with the numbers within those service areas, because again, planning is a much bigger business unit than quite a lot of the others listed there. But I appreciate you're having to potentially flick between two reports to look at that. So yes, there will always be, especially within our sort of parks and streets scene, those challenges of being a very frontline all-weather service. And obviously that's something that we continue to support staff with. But as I say, we'll look at how we can map that across next time. But I don't think it's an indicator of particular issues in those areas. I think it's an indicator of having more staff in those areas.
So supplementary to that is this is a negative performance against a corporate target. Does it mean perhaps the corporate target might be a little bit too ambitious?
Sorry, can I just clarify which bit you're referring to there?
5.4, the absence.
So again, I think it's always difficult, isn't it? Whilst I appreciate why there are corporate targets around things like sickness, I think it's always very challenging, because actually it's not something that we're not wanting people to reach a target. We're wanting to keep people well and to keep people at work and enable them to return to work as quickly as we can. What I would say is around average days lost, they can be skewed, especially in areas, maybe not so much in terms of environment community, but in some of our smaller areas where you might have individuals off, one or two individuals off for a long period. And when you look at average days for everyone, obviously that can skew those figures. So I think it's important to say this is why we cut the data in a number of different ways. So rather than looking at one table and one set of data and saying there's an issue or everything's fine, it's looking at a number of, I guess, versions of that to try and make sure that we're clear where the issues are. But also, typically those kind of services would have a sort of higher sickness absence rate. Doesn't mean we shouldn't support staff, doesn't mean we shouldn't do everything we can to enable staff to stay well and to be back at work, but the manual, frontline, sort of very outdoor nature of the work does tend to lead to a sort of higher than average sickness absence rate anyway, and the target is set across the organisation rather than service by service.
So can we just make one recommendation? I'll sum up at the end. So it's the layout of the report for sickness and resignations. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Court.
Thank you. I was just looking at the report generally and thinking to myself, which are the areas you find it hardest to recruit in?
So I guess there's a couple of answers to that. I think we, like most local authorities, have certain areas that are challenging, especially at the moment. So we know, for example, nationally, areas like planning are incredibly difficult, and we're not immune to that as an organisation. So there certainly are particular services that are challenging. I think for us, because of the nature of some of the things we're doing as an authority, so we're doing lots of really positive work around regeneration. Again, some of those roles can be tricky, although we've had some really good successes in that area. I think it's also important, and again we've mentioned this before, to recognise that we are geographically in a really challenging position as well. So actually we don't attract, for example, London waiting in the same way that some other authorities not that much closer to London than us would do. And actually we are in the south of England, and we are in close proximity to London. But all of those reasons are why we're doing the pay and benefits review that we're talking about later on, to try and make sure that we can be competitive within that market. But yes, it's a number of those services.
Russell?
I suppose just to briefly add to what Sarah said, it is a challenge for the sector overall. I mean, my personal view is we just don't have enough young people coming into the sector in a whole range of skill areas. Planning is one. Another significant challenge, particularly in its specialist areas such as planning and property, is you can earn multiple times often working for the private sector with the skill sets perhaps you've developed within the public sector. And you know that's a challenge for all local authorities, and as Sarah's alluded to, our location gives us a whole range of advantages for a whole range of things. This is one area where it isn't always an advantage, because often we're competing with London boroughs, for example, who pay more.
When you look at the statistics for people who've been here 5 years and are leaving, it's far higher than anything else. I'm just wondering if that's reflecting that people have gained a skill set and have moved on.
So I think it's an interesting question, isn't it, around those that have been here for that length of time. I think we have to recognise there's probably a number of factors to that. So we are a relatively small organisation in comparison to others. So, for example, large unitaries or county councils will have potentially many more layers within the hierarchy in terms of places that people can develop into. So I think that's one factor. I think we also have to recognise, which is what Russell's just alluded to, that we do have some challenges in terms of other places that staff in all sorts of functions, including many of our corporate functions like finance and HR. Again, you can attract much higher wages in some of our private sector competitors. So I think it's something that we continue to look at. But also it's really important that we do develop our staff. We absolutely hope that they will stay, but we also have staff who've left us and who've come back to the authority. So there is also something about, it sounds a bit trite, but leaving well in terms of still maintaining that relationship with staff, because actually even if they do move on and maybe gain additional skills elsewhere, they may well still come back to us as an authority if we're seen as a good employer. So even if people are leaving us, it's still really important to kind of maintain those good working relationships.
Russell, want to
just briefly add to that? So absolutely, and there will be elements of that. I think also certainly something I've noticed over the last year and a half, particularly at all levels of this organisation and other organisations, is I think the pandemic has often made people think about different life choices, different career choices. So I think there's an element of that at play. And I think the other thing I'd say, which I think I've said in HR committee here before, not all turnover is actually a bad thing. Obviously, we want to retain our staff, but equally, we do want new people coming into the organisation with new experiences, new ideas, a fresh look on things. So our turnover is actually at a pretty positive level. It's sort of about the level you would want, because you don't want no turnover at all either, because that's not a positive thing either for organisational approach or culture either.
Councillor Mackay?
I was going to make exactly the point that Russell's just made, that turnover at an acceptable level isn't necessarily a bad thing, and you do need new people and ideas coming into an organisation.
Councillor Court? Oh, we're done. Okay. So you've done questions. I don't think there'll be anything to debate on this. So are we all okay to note the report with the recommendation of Sarah and her team looking at the layout of the report for sickness against resignations? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so the next one is the gender pay gap report. So we've got Louise Stoner here to introduce, so same format as before. Louise will present, and then if you've got any questions, thank you.
Thank you very much. So just to provide some background information, the gender pay gap is a valuable tool for assessing levels of equality in the workplace in relation to the female and male participation and how effective talent is being maximised. The council is required under legislation to publish information relating to the relative pay gap between the male and female employees. And this shows the difference between the average, which could be the mean or the median earnings of men and women. In line with many other employers, the council must comply with the regulations as we have a headcount of 250 or more employees on the snapshot data, which is on the 31st of March each year. In total, there are 6 various calculations to carry out as outlined in the report, and the information must be published on the council's website and also on the government's website. So, as per the report, the mean gender pay gap for the whole economy in 2022 stood at 13.9%. So when we compare this to the council's mean gender pay gap for 2022, this was minus 5.8% in favour of women. Then we have the median gender pay gap for the whole economy in 2022 stood at 14.9%. This is compared to the council's median gender pay gap for 2022, which was minus 27.4% in favour of women. And so although the council does not pay bonuses as such, honorariums can have a performance element, so they need to be declared alongside long service awards. The council's mean bonus gender pay gap is 11.7% in favour of men in 2022, with only 3.3% of relevant employees receiving this honour area payment or long service award. And just to flag, with small numbers involved, it can actually skew the results. And as advised in the report paper, the 2021 mean bonus gender pay gap was minus 21.5%. So just to summarise, the council's position overall in a good position and comparing favourably with the gender pay gap of other organisations. And this therefore does reflect the council's aspirations to be a fair and inclusive employer. I welcome any questions arising from the report.
No. Thank you for putting that together. It's interesting, and year after year we always get good results, which is brilliant. So if we've got no questions, are we all okay to note the report? Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so item 7 then is the pay and benefits review update report. And again, we've got Louise to present and then take any questions.
Thank you very much. So the purpose of the pay and benefits review is to provide a fair and transparent system for establishing pay grades and relevant allowances to best ensure that the council continues to attract and retain staff, respond to market changes and comply with equal pay legislation. It's also sought to enable a full review of spans of control across the organisation with a view to rationalising the current structure. To achieve this, the review has been designed with 4 work streams which are detailed into the report. The first work stream being an introduction of a new job evaluation system to enable a fair and transparent system for assessing the worth of job roles. Number 2 is the review of existing job roles within the council in line with the job evaluation system as job families. And then the third stream is review of the benefits package, which includes pay benchmarking. And number 4 is review of spans of control across the council. The council has been working with Corn Ferry to deliver the 2 work streams related to the new Corn Ferry Hay job evaluation system. We can confirm that all existing roles have been evaluated under Hay, and pay modelling has also been undertaken. In December, as detailed in the report, engagement work was undertaken with staff to gather feedback on the current benefits package. A survey was sent out to all members of staff, and this resulted in a 61% response rate, which is 340 responses. So the results gathered from this survey, we were really able to identify what benefits are most valued. It also provided us with a variety of comments and feedbacks. To put it into perspective, there was over 367 comments, and this was on ideas for new benefits or making amendments to existing ones that we already have. Benchmarking work in relation to benefits offered in other organisations has also been collected, and a proposed benefit package which is currently going to be reviewed. As advised in the report, consultation with all members of staff will commence in March for the proposals for the new pay and benefits system, and as we have throughout the project, we will continue to engage with Unison regarding this. So I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Court?
Couple if I might. Under 2.3 we've talked about London and location, which I'm presuming relates to London rating, the ability to offer London rating.
Yeah, so I think I can pick that one up. So that section is very much talking, I guess, around the background to the report, and a bit like we talked about earlier on, recognition that our proximity to London does present a challenge. So I think in terms of the benchmarking data we're using, and to, I guess, manage expectations around that, that's not suggesting that we are going to be able to pay the same as you would get in central London, or necessarily in terms of London weighting. But what it is trying to do is to position us well within the market in this area, obviously within the constraints in terms of, you know, what is affordable as a local authority, and that's the balancing act that we're going through with that information. So I think it's a piece of information, but obviously it's not the only one that we're using in terms of coming to that final answer around our pay structure.
Can I ask a supplementary on that one? That presumably then goes back on to benchmarking in terms of benefits. What sort of benefits are you offering of interest?
Oh, sorry. We offer a range of benefits. So this is from a cash plan, a health scheme, a healthcare cash plan scheme. We've also asked for feedback, such as we offer a range of wellbeing support. So as part of the cash plan, we have an employees assistance programme. We've also asked for feedback on kind of annual leave. Sorry, I'm just trying to think what other ones we asked for feedback on. Be rewarded. So yeah, apologies. We have an employees online discount portal as well for members of staff that they can access.
And I'd like just to make you aware we can access it as well. Be rewarded. Save some money there. Councillor Court, did you have a follow-up at all?
Two other questions
Yeah.
on other parts of the
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
If I can carry on with those. You've mentioned risk management, which is section 6. Exactly how are you setting up that risk management? Is this risk and rewards process, or is it known risks and quantifying the risks and the mitigation? That's the first question. And the second one was just to, if someone could clarify exactly how this process is affected by the climate change and ecological issues.
Okay, so I'll take those points in turn. In terms of the risk management, I guess that's been sort of integral to the project from the beginning. So that was really us understanding what both the risks were in terms of delivery of the project, and also, I guess, potential future risks to the organisation if we weren't able to kind of deliver successfully. So I think we built the sort of matrix around risk management fairly early on in the process, and we've continued to look at that as we go through. As I say, I think it's both recognising the need for us to deliver in line with the original objectives of the project, but also making sure that it's sustainable into the future, which is always a challenge in terms of the crystal ball. And in terms of the climate change and ecological, absolutely. So in terms of the range of benefits we offer, we do have a number of what you might term travel-related benefits as well. So we have, for example, a lease car scheme, the salary sacrifice scheme. We have pool cars, pool bikes. There are discounts on public transport, those kind of benefits as well. So we have been working in conjunction with our colleagues in the climate change team, especially around those types of benefits, but also some of our other things that are integral to how we work, things like mileage claims, for example, to really look at how we need to shape the benefits moving forward, because yes, we need to deliver our services as an organisation, and that's really important, but actually, because we've declared that climate emergency, how do we also weave that in, and how do we create that balance between those two things? So yes, we've been continuing in conversations with our colleagues, as we will do moving forward, so that is absolutely forefront in the conversation as well.
Thank you, Chair, that's fine.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay, so we all agree to note the report?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So item 8 is the updated human resources policies. So we've got Louise to present again, but just to make you aware, on section 2.5, we're going to be looking to approve policies earlier than when they should come up, just to fit in around the committees. Okay, Louise, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So constitutionally, the committee are responsible for kind of agreeing a set of policies that have a significant impact on staff and cost to the council. These policies are all detailed in section 2.1 of the report. There's 9 various policies as set out in the report. What we've actually done today, we're actually bringing 2 policies that have had some minor revisions, and this is the disability and accessibility policy and the grievance policy and procedure. So if we just go through those policies and then we'll come back to the actual schedule. So as I've said, they've had minor revisions made. These are all listed in the report and they relate to items such as formatting. We've also included the hybrid and virtual meetings into the policies and have provided further clarity on aspects of the process as well as listed. So just to advise, the purpose of the disability and accessibility policy, it sets out how the council will work to eliminate discrimination on the grounds of disability and how the council will make reasonable adjustments to help support people with a disability. This policy also covers access such as access to employment and customer facing and partner work. And then the next policy is the grievance policy and procedure. The purpose of this is to provide the council with a mechanism to deal with any problems or concerns which employees may have about their work quickly, consistently and fairly. And as listed from section 3 and section 4, you can see an actual breakdown of all the proposed revisions. We have worked with Unison and we have sent them copies of the policies, and they fed back to us some revisions to take into consideration, such as in relation to the grievance report, which we have included as said in section 4.2. There was some changing of the terminology and also to give further clarification on the mediation process as we engage with a third party in relation to that. So they have seen that. So that's the first part. If welcome any questions regarding the kind of revisions that we've actually put in and suggesting.
Councillor Mackay?
That's a comment rather than a question. It's good to see an update on the latest ACAS guidelines. That's always a great place to start when it comes to grievance procedures, and the involvement of Unison is very much to be welcomed. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll take each recommendation separately. Okay, we'll talk to the schedule and then we'll take it.
Thank you. So the second part of this section was to review and approve the updated policy review schedule. And so a new schedule has been put together, and this is really to ensure that the policies can be timed across the scheduled committees, and this is detailed in section 2.5 of the report. And just to provide some context, in September 2021, the committee approved a schedule for policies, and this has now been completed. So section 2.5 displays the new schedule.
Okay, I can't see any hands raised. No, all okay? Okay, so the first one is to review and approve the updating policies for disability and accessibility, and then the grievance policy and procedure. I think we agreed that. And then the second bit we're asked to look at is to review and approve the updated policy review schedule to ensure that these can be timed across the schedule committee as outlined in section 2.5. Agreed. So thank you for pulling together that timeline. It's really helpful. Okay, so we're on to final report. So item 9, the pay policy statement for 2023 to 2024. again, I think we've been asked to recommend and note. So I'll pass over to Sarah to present, and then any questions.
Thank you, Chair. So just by way of a bit of a reminder really, so the pay policy statement is something that is produced annually by all councils and must be adopted by full council. So there is a recommendation for this committee to recommend the statement to full council to be considered. So the main purpose of the statement really is to set out the key council policies on pay, as well as to provide some information on the pay ranges of senior officers, and also what's known as the relationship between the highest and lowest paid council employees. So that's expressed as a ratio, and as noted in the report, for this statement, that's a ratio of 4.56 to 1, which is a reduction of 4.81 to 1 from last year. So as I say, that's the highest paid council employees against those that are lowest paid. So the statement is based very closely on the one for the current year, with the changes as set out within the report. So there are some minor changes just draw your attention to. So as you would expect, salary figures have been updated where there have been changes as a result of starters and leavers within the organisation. We've also updated job titles as appropriate where there have been changes. Section 4.2 particularly refers to the pay and benefits review, and obviously, as we've already heard this evening, the council will be moving to the Corn Ferry Hay job evaluation scheme during the coming financial year. But as per the update from Louise, we need to undertake the consultation with staff first in advance of the final pay and benefits structure. Therefore, this can't be detailed within this pay policy statement at this stage. The other element, just to draw your attention to, obviously the current position with regards to the National Pay Award for 2023-24, so that's yet to be agreed, and again that's referred to within the pay policy statement. And again, you'll note existing delegation in terms of updating the pay scales as and when that may be agreed. But I think we're a little way away from that at this stage. Happy to take any questions on the statement.
Councillor Tustain.
Yes, I did have a question around, I was looking at the apprenticeship rates, I think where it is, page 79. One thing I think, obviously there's a problem trying to get apprentices in. I think this is something we possibly did talk about either last meeting or the meeting before, and I was looking at this, and I think even if you've got, obviously if you've got apprentices, they could come in age 25 or above, the pay is still incredibly low. So, although you might be trying to attract school leavers and co, but obviously these are people that once they would come into a sort of local authority environment, you would hope would be people that are likely to stay, but obviously it's just trying to get them in. I wondered if there's anything, this might be a local authority issue around the country and it's quite difficult to deal with, but looking at that, I wondered if there's anything you're considering or what the thoughts are around that.
Absolutely, I completely recognise the apprenticeships are a really important part of our workforce moving forward, and that's at all levels, and it is really positive that we have moved away to broaden apprenticeships out to all sorts of age ranges and people with different backgrounds, because they're available at all kinds of levels now. So yes is the short answer. So the apprenticeship pay is one of the things that we're looking at as part of the pay and benefits review, because they are still members of our workforce for the period of time that they're here doing their apprenticeship. I think it's also fair to say when we've done benchmarking across other organisations, there are a range of ways that people kind of apply the apprenticeship pay. So we are looking at whether we need to review our scales and offer something different, as I say, as part of the pay and benefits review we're doing.
Okay, so are we in agreement then? So the first recommendation is the pay policy, so we recommend it to the council. Are we in agreement with that? Appendix 1. And then the second point we're asked is to note the existing delegation of the Head of Human Resources, Communications and Policy to update the pay statement as to result of any pay awards which the council is contractually bound to agree with. Okay, so we've got no items that we need to discuss with the exclusion of the press and public or confidential items. It is 7:15 and the meeting is now closed.